When I tell people that I work for a hospice, the most common response I get is, "Don't you find it depressing?" So staff and volunteers at Pilgrims Hospices have made a short film to show what it's really like working in a hospice and just what it takes to give hospice care to the people of East Kent. We hope this film shows that we put our arms not only around our patients, but around their friends and families too. We also wanted it to reflect the wide range of work we do. I also really hope it helps to overcome the taboos that exist around talking about death and dying.
I used to pass by on the bus comes through the hospital grounds here, and I thought this was the overspill from the hospital of people dying. That's what I thought. Some people actually think there's a tunnel from the QEQM hospital, goes underground and brings them here, so people aren't distressed by seeing coffins come across the road. I've heard all this.
So let's hear from some Pilgrims staff and volunteers talking in their own words about what they do and how together they provide the best possible care for our patients and their loved ones. Annie, you've worked for Pilgrims for a long time. How would you say it's changed over the years?
I think it was about 1986 when I first came to the hospice, and that was at Canterbury, and there was really an inpatient unit then, a ward as we know it, and nothing else. So it's changed incredibly over these last years. We've now got 3 sites that we run our services out of in Ashford and Canterbury and Margate, and a huge amount of work in the community, including some outpatient work that we do out of facilities. So it's grown dramatically in those years. It's hard to really say how much.
A lot of people have the opinion that pilgrims or hospices are just a place where someone goes to die. And something else that within working in it, it is so much more than that. What it offers is the opportunity for patients who've got a terminal diagnosis to live their life as best as they can within their limitations.
We're all about our patients' well-being. This is what makes us a hospice rather than a hospital. We have a huge team, a multidisciplinary team, like very much that we do in hospitals. However, we think about not just our patients' medical conditions, but their well-being, what makes them them and what's important to them and what they care about, and also their whole families and friends, their circle as well.
Can you tell me if the work you do is mostly for patients on the ward or is it out in the community?
We do see people on the ward. We go up to the ward, we see people there and their carers and their family on the ward, but we also see people outside in their own homes, in an outreach centre, in our centre here, because obviously our wards probably 12 beds, but we have hundreds of people in the community. So yes, there's more people in the community than ward-based, but we do see them in both settings.
So is the work you do focused solely on patients or is it for families and carers as well?
What makes hospice care special is it treats not just the medical side of a person's illness, but also their family issues, bereavement, supporting them to adjust to changes in their lives. So it's a really, really important part of hospice care, that holistic assessment. So we look after not just the patient's physical issues, but also their emotional, their psychological and their practical concerns as well, for them and for their families.
I've always had an interest in palliative and end-of-life care and worked closely with the consultants for the hospice when they did their ward rounds up at the hospital, and nagged until they decided that having an OT would be a good idea. And so I was the first occupational therapist to come across to Pilgrims, and we've built the team from there. There are now 11 of us, so that's me, 6 occupational therapists, and we have band 4 occupational therapy assistants as well. So we help people with anxiety management, pain, fatigue, the kind of things that might stop people from being able to be as active in their life as they want to be.
My role is about developing expert volunteers, and it's a concept that came out of some work that we did 2 or 3 years ago with our local hospital to try to think about end-of-life care on the wards for patients. And out of that we recognised that there was a need to think about bereavement services for East Kent. And because of that, we decided that going ahead to develop volunteers to be part of this project would be an excellent starting point, and that's what we did. We started working a little bit with Crews, bereavement care, and Pilgrims and Crews started the affiliation together, and we've now developed 14 volunteers into expert roles to deliver bereavement support. They do that out of groups in Ashford and Canterbury and Margate. It's a fantastic service that provides, in a nutshell, bereavement support for any adult in East Kent.
If you take a seat there.
Thank you.
What did you know about the hospice before you came to work here?
Well, 27 years ago, my mother was here at the hospice and I had first-hand chance to see how they worked. The nurses were wonderful to my mum, but not only that, they helped me and Dad as well in a really difficult time. So now coming here to work for them, I feel so honoured.
How would you say our physio services are unique at the hospice?
I think that's the main thing really, is that we do have time. We're given the time to sit and listen to people's concerns and just allow them to talk about what they're experiencing, or what they're going through and the impact on them and their family. Even me as a physio, I'm allowed to have that time. So the hospice isn't primarily driven by targets like in the NHS. You have to really make sure that you're meeting your targets. Where here it's very much person-centred care, where we consider the whole person, and we're allowed to then kind of, like say, we're afforded that time just to make sure we're really finding out what matters to them. That's part of the thing that we do.
So tell me about your role, Mandy, what you and your team do.
Yeah. I'm one of 3 advanced nurse practitioners that work in the 3 hospices. We've got 1 on each site, and I work at Canterbury. Our role is fairly unique in Kent at the moment. We, as a team of nurse practitioners, we have special skills. We do prescribing, we can clinically examine patients, and we're also very involved with education as well. My role is partly to work with the patients on the ward. I used to run clinics, and we hope that we'll do that in the future. But yes, I do a lot of work in the community, dealing with new patients and working alongside our colleagues, our district nursing colleagues and GPs to offer that kind of complete care.
So one of the things I love about my job is getting it to combine my passion for cycling with many of the fundraising activities that we do here at Pilgrims Hospices.
Rob, can you tell me a bit about one of your flagship events?
So one of the biggest and most popular events of the year is the Pilgrims Hospices Cycle Challenge. It's been running for a long time now, since 2010. More than 10 years now, people have been turning out and supporting Pilgrims Hospices by getting on their bikes and cycling around the countryside of East Kent. This very modest man here, who's been coming to doing the Cycle Challenge for many years before he began to help with the organisation of it. I mean, did you know you've raised over £5,500 over the years?
To be perfectly fair, the credit for that must go to the people in the Royal Mail Delivery Office in Canterbury, who are hugely supportive of the hospice. Almost everybody you approach says, a relative of mine, a friend of mine, they looked after me. It was such a happy place to be, and they give really generously.
And I gather last year for the Pilgrims Way Challenge you developed an app. Can you tell me how that helped?
It began as an idea to make the event even safer and even more enjoyable for the people who took part. And it's something that we're very proud of, and it's quite unique to Pilgrims. They can see in real time interactive route maps of where they're going and see themselves on that as well. So it's an extra tool in the arsenal for making sure that people don't get lost. It's won a couple of awards, including the Charity Times Fundraising Innovation Award.
I started in Thanet when we were only 10 beds when we opened, in 1992 as a cook. And then I progressed and to working in fundraising.
You're now sat there with 4 fundraising tins.
Yes,
so
yes,
how do they form part of your role now?
I now go, it's one of my main roles now is to go around to pubs, shops, placing as many tins as possible, which every penny counts.
What is it that makes the lottery special, Shirley?
Well, we're nearly 25 years old, we'll be 25 next year, and we've got over 20,000 members, and across the years we've actually added lots of different products to our portfolios, and what is really, really amazing, out of the 2,500 prize cheques we've already sent out this year, 974 have been sent back to us for us to treat as donations for the hospice, so I think that's absolutely amazing and shows how wonderful our supporters are.
Well, some of the simple ways we get the public to talk to us about death and dying are through death cafes. These are informal get-togethers over coffee and cake where we just encourage a conversation about any anxieties or concerns people might have about death and dying. Hardly ever does anyone cry. I know the first one we did was in here.
We spend months and months planning for that, but we don't plan for our death. And actually, it's only since working in a hospice that I've realised it is just as important to plan for that.
Yeah. My role is that of voluntary services manager, so I work with others to develop our strategy for volunteering and utilising volunteers across the whole organisation.
Jeff, can you give me an idea of how many volunteers we have and what sort of roles they fulfil?
It is quite vast actually. We have about 1,500 people from the community of East Kent who donate their time and their skills and their commitment to supporting us as volunteers in a range of about 30 plus different roles. But we estimate it's about just over 150,000 hours a year of donated time that we get from people of East Kent. But for me the most important thing is the fact that whilst they're here they make a significant difference to the people that we support.
So when I think back about something that we were involved in called the Compassion Project 3 or 4 years ago now, that came out of a concept of wanting to deliver really good end-of-life care wherever the patient that needed it was. We've always had a very good relationship with our local hospitals, but this was a project that embraced us both working together in partnership. This small, tiny symbol called the compassion symbol was to be used alongside any patient that was actively dying in a hospital ward. With this tiny symbol and the training of all the staff that worked in there, including catering staff and portering staff, as well as the clinical staff, we were able to bring huge awareness to over 55 wards to show that they needed to have a mindful, respectful approach to anybody that was at end of life.
Do you provide any services that you think people would be surprised about?
I think people don't expect in terms of we're able to go and support patients at home, to give them the time that they need to talk about things that may be affecting them through their diagnosis, through coming to terms with their diagnosis and what that means for them and their family and for the future. I feel very privileged to do what I do.
Rodney is now 5.5 and we have been coming to the hospice probably for, I should think, 3 years now. And he really enjoys coming here because obviously all the fuss he gets. But it's nice to come along every Wednesday, I come along, because it's nice to see the smiles that he puts on people's faces. I can very often not even be needed. He knows his way around so well that if I'm, for example, chatting to a nurse in a corridor, I'll look around and he's gone, and he's wandered off into a patient's room and introduced himself to the patient and the visitors. He just loves it. He's just a natural. They don't get training, but with pets as therapy, they have to be assessed. So he was assessed, and he's so laid back that he easily passed. Because originally I used to work in hospitals, and I once saw somebody doing this with a dog, and I thought, one day, if I find the appropriate dog, I'll try that myself. And he's such a unique dog that I thought he's the one to give it a try. I know it sounds really cliche, but you actually, when I come in on a Wednesday, you feel like you're coming into a family, from everybody, from the consultants, the nurses, the people that keep everything spotless, the maintenance people, everybody. They're just, it is one big family, which I don't know, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's true.
I look after the IT department at Pilgrims Hospices. That includes the 3 main hospices and the retail operation as well, including 33 shops.
Chris, how do you help the community team with IT?
Recently we have finished migrating our patient administration system to a system called EMIS, which is used by the local GP practices. This allows us to share information with our healthcare colleagues in almost real time, allowing us to deliver care and coordinate with our healthcare colleagues in an efficient manner. We allow visits with patients via Zoom or FaceTime via iPads or tablets, giving internet access on the wards so that if people aren't able to visit their relatives physically, we can enable that. One particular instance I remember is we had a gentleman who was unable to attend his daughter's wedding. So we were able to set him up with a laptop and Skype, and at the other end, because it was in another country, they had the laptop on a trolley and they were wheeling it around the wedding reception. He had a little trolley of drinks and he was able to cheers and be present at the ceremony, which was quite nice.
Most people don't realise that this place is very different and very special, and I've got catering people and domestic teams who go in and speak to patients on a daily basis. They build relationships, they have rapport, I think, and they're the bits that people wouldn't necessarily realise or understand. And actually it's quite often that patients will open up far more to someone who's non-clinical than they do to somebody who's clinical. So nurses and the doctors they see as very functional, but actually, you know, if a cleaner's in the room or one of the catering team are in the room, they're more likely to chat about really how they're feeling. So I think those people are absolutely integral to the Pilgrims team.
But the reason we do research is to ensure that we have the best care and treatment available and to provide the best care that we can for our patients.
I work as a research nurse. I collaborate more with the acute trust on the actual delivery side of it. So Charlotte's kind of developing projects, whereas I am fully funded projects and how we deliver it here. And a couple of things we're working on at the moment are around things like fatigue and breathlessness. Part of that will be post-COVID breathlessness, so we're very much, looking at current state with the drugs that we're doing, and it's just really an opportunity for patients to make a difference, that they can still get involved in research even at that stage, and it's really about opening it up so that everybody gets an opportunity to take part. We just need to know that we need people to know that we do research here.
I've been the complementary therapist since I came here, first of all, many years ago, and then several years ago I was asked to look after the spiritual care of the hospice here. Just a point on that was that it was noticeable that when our newly referred patients had their first assessment, an awful lot of them, nearly 50%, were saying they didn't have a faith. The difference between us and a hospital is we help the families as well, so we involve them in everything that goes on, and we have all sorts of ways of doing it. All the departments are involved. The care is there. There's always someone there if needed, so that you do. Our mission statement is to live your life to the full as long as you possibly can, right up to the end, and then we look after you.
Have you had any particularly unusual requests from patients for food?
We had an instance where one of the patients at day hospice wanted to have a lobster, which he hasn't eaten at all. So he wanted to try a lobster, and we had to go to the store and bought one for him, cooked for him, and he was very happy with it. And he came upstairs and said, "Oh, thank you to everybody," and It was very good.
We had a couple that wanted to get married. I think they had their blessing in the chapel, and I made them a wedding cake so that they could bring in family to share it with them. So that was a really nice occasion. We dressed the family room up for them so that it made the best we could, and we all enjoyed it. You know, the nurses, cleaners, we all went to see them, and it was a really nice occasion.
My partner Joanne unfortunately developed a brain tumour. We thought first of all that it was epilepsy, childhood epilepsy, come back. Respite, she came in here twice and they looked after her so wonderfully. I actually said before that in the magazine article that at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, if she wanted an all-day breakfast, someone would make her an all-day breakfast, and I thought that was wonderful. Yeah, because they looked after her so wonderfully, I decided to help out as much as I could. So all the volunteers here have a story to tell. A loved one has passed away and they feel that they have to and want to give something back. There's a young chap, Michael, he's only 25 now, he was 23 at the time. He grows his own vegetables there, and I help build the boxes and trugs. This is all hand built from pallets. We built everything from pallets. We scour around, we go to the hospital to the pharmacy department, they're always glad to give us the pallets. So it's all handmade from pallets.
So we were a small team. We cover the whole of South East Kent, visiting people in their homes, wherever that may be, bringing the hospice to the home.
We do have times where, say if someone is struggling at home, carer breakdown, and they're not able to get hold of any carers, then we can come in and cover the interim until they can find a care package. To be quite honest, as a lot of people say, I thought it was just somewhere that people can go who want to die. It wasn't until having an interview that I actually found out a lot more information, and obviously since joining, realising that there's such a bigger aspect to it and so many different parts and teams that we just joined together.
I'd had quite a lot of experience of people I knew that had been here. Through school, we also were linked with the hospice and did fundraising and always came up and decorated the Christmas trees in the daycare centres. So it was one of those charities that I was very aware of, and as a friend of mine said, you never know when you yourself are going to need it.
Are there any special moments that particularly stick in your memory over the years while you've been with the hospice?
Yeah. Last year I was lucky, or maybe unlucky enough, to have personal experience of the hospice care. I was caring for a loved one at home who was also a volunteer here, who was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and for 6 months we benefited from the most incredible outreach care from the hospice. I can't speak highly enough of the nurses, the OTs, the physios, the complementary therapists. Just knowing there was somebody on the end of the phone who you could ring in the middle of the night was just so comforting, and that enabled Anne to stay at home and fulfil her wish of not having to go into hospital or hospice.
I hope you've enjoyed watching this film, and I really hope we've managed to show you just what it takes to provide hospice care. Pilgrim's aim is to ensure that the people of East Kent get the quality comfort and care they deserve when and where they want it.